One fine day, Mr. Oldcastle was lying flat on his back. He was under his car, an Austin Clifton Heavy 12.4 vintage 1926. It was his pride and joy, and he called it Gumdrop. "Can I help?" asked his neighbour, Mr. Bumblebee. "Not really," said Mr. Oldcastle, "but a 60-year-old car like Gumdrop needs a lot of checking. You can come in for tea, though." As they entered the kitchen, Horace the dog was about to eat a treacle tart. "Be off, you horrible hound," growled Mr. Oldcastle. He was worried. Gumdrop had been rattling and shaking a bit. He needed some new parts. It was a long list. Nuts and bolts, valves, and some new tyres. "But there's no time to get them. Tomorrow is Gumdrop's birthday, and we're off to the Bewley Historic Motor Show." He gave Horace a treacle tart without thinking. "Never mind," said Mr. Bumblebee. "Gumdrop is a strong car. He'll wait for the replacements." Horace needed a replacement too, and helped himself to a sausage roll. Next morning, Mr. Bumblebee brought a map. "Don't go by the motorway. Use this AA route. It's a scenic way." "Thank you," said Mr. Oldcastle. He said goodbye, and they drove off. The route was beautiful. Down leafy lanes, cows mooing, birds singing. Gumdrop's engine purred, though it did rattle and shake from time to time. "But no matter," said Mr. Oldcastle. Just then he saw an old-fashioned AA man thumbing a lift. "May I assist you?" Mr. Oldcastle asked. The man was most upset. "Two ruffians jumped out from the trees and stole my vintage AA motorcycle," said Mr. Letts. "We can't have that. Come on, jump in," growled Mr. Oldcastle. Gumdrop shot forward, skidding and lurching round the narrow bends. His old parts rattled and shook more and more. "Gumdrop to the rescue!" roared Mr. Oldcastle. And there, ahead of them, was the motorbike. Gumdrop overtook the motorbike and screeched to a halt, blocking the road. So the motorbike had to stop as well. Mr. Letts jumped out of Gumdrop, but Horace was even quicker. He leapt at the ruffians with such horrible snarling growls that they were off that bike in a flash. They bolted for the trees and vanished. Phew, the motorcycle was safe. It was the earliest AA road service outfit in existence and was very valuable. "I hope I may be able to repay you," said Mr. Letts. "But now I must go on to Bewley." With that, he fut-futted away. With all that speeding, Gumdrop rattled and shook more than ever. "I doubt if poor Gumdrop will make it," said Mr. Oldcastle. Just as he said that, there was an extra loud rattle, and Gumdrop stopped. Farmer Dean offered to help. They checked Gumdrop all over, but couldn't find what was wrong. "I know. I'll call the AA," said Farmer Dean, who was already a member. They said they would come at once. When the AA man arrived, he realised that Mr. Oldcastle was not a member. "I fear we can't help you," he said sternly. Then he looked at Gumdrop. "Oh, my children know all about him," he said. His children would never forgive him if he didn't help, so help he did. He soon found the trouble. "It's the clutch," but not even his well-equipped van carried such old vintage parts to mend it. "This is most irregular," he said, "but we must get Gumdrop to the show." He then radioed for a transporter, and Gumdrop was carried piggyback to the Bewley Historic Motor Show. He arrived in time to line up with the other historic cars, one for every 10 years since the very first car was made, an 1886 Benz. They were all very splendid, even though Gumdrop still had a broken clutch. Then Mr. Letts arrived, and Mr. Oldcastle explained his trouble. "My dear sir," Mr. Letts said, "this bike is filled with vintage spare parts. I shall be delighted to help in return for your noble rescue." With the help of other AA patrols, they mended Gumdrop in no time. Horace longed for spare parts too, treacle tarts or sausage rolls. Mr. Letts made a speech. He was very important, as his grandfather had started the AA in 1905. He told the crowd how Gumdrop had rescued him. "For that valiant act, I shall propose him to be elected an honorary member of the AA." Then Lord Montague, who owned the big house, made a speech and presented Gumdrop with an old-fashioned AA badge for his 60th birthday. The other drivers gave Gumdrop presents too. Now Gumdrop doesn't rattle or shake anymore.